Ethan hadn't planned on becoming anyone's enemy. He built furniture, not drama. His days were shaped by rhythm, the whir of the sander, the satisfying bite of a chisel, the smooth grain of walnut under his palm. But with Karen across the street, silence had become a warning. Her windows were always dark, yet he could feel her eyes pressing through the glass, hunting for mistakes. He didn't speak of it much, not even to his sister Layla, who lived 2 neighborhoods over and occasionally dropped in to help with logistics. But Layla noticed his shoulders tightening, the tension in his voice when he mentioned the lady across the street. One evening, she leaned against the garage doorway, arms folded, watching him rub oil into a finished dining table. "She's still bothering you?" Ethan didn't answer right away. "She's watching everything. She sent emails to 2 clients, one of them canceled." His fingers slowed. "It's harassment. But no one wants to call it that when it's dressed up as community concern." Layla frowned. "Then you call it what it is." But Ethan hesitated. In a place like Willow Creek, perception held power. Karen hadn't just studied the rules, she wielded them like weapons. She had already gained a foothold in the HOA, pushed through a new subcommittee on environmental compliance, and circulated an anonymous newsletter warning residents about non-conforming activity. Everyone knew who she meant. No one said her name. The week after the zoning inspection, another letter arrived, this time in a sealed envelope, hand-delivered. Inside was a printed screenshot of Ethan's business website. Below it, someone had scrawled in red ink, "Operating illegally in residential zone. This ends soon." No signature. No official letterhead. Just the cold, clear signal of escalation. Ethan turned the letter over slowly. He looked across the street. Karen's porch light flicked on, as if she'd been watching for this moment. Her curtains rippled slightly. Was she enjoying this? Was she daring him to respond? He didn't call the police, not yet. But he scanned every file on his business license, every email confirming his zoning status, every permit he had ever filed. He made copies, placed them in a folder, and labeled it in bold. Insurance against crazy. That night, long after midnight, the sound of a car idling pulled him from bed. He crept to the window. Karen's SUV sat motionless, headlights off, parked, just beyond the edge of his driveway. She didn't move, didn't get out. After 5 minutes, she turned the engine off. She was watching again. By morning, she was gone, but something had changed. The front of his mailbox had been ripped halfway off its post, and the oak tree at the edge of his yard, something sharp, had gouged a thick, jagged scar into the bark. That was enough. Ethan installed cameras that day. High resolution, discreet, covering every angle. He wasn't just protecting his business anymore, he was preparing for war. And still, no one else on the street said a word. They saw the notices. They heard the drone. They pretended they didn't. Ethan realized that Karen didn't just rule through rules, she ruled through fear. But she'd miscalculated one thing. He was no longer afraid. He'd started digging into her past HOA involvement, into her job with the county clerk's office, and into public records that someone like Karen should have known to keep cleaner. By the end of that week, he found something odd. 3 years ago, another homeowner in her last neighborhood had filed a complaint against her for targeted harassment through HOA powers. Ethan leaned back in his chair, staring at the screen. This wasn't her first war, but it was going to be her last. The weather turned colder, but Ethan barely noticed. His thoughts ran hotter every day. Every delivery now came with a sense of dread, as if each truck might summon another complaint. Another twisted accusation crafted by Karen's precise, poisonous hand. She didn't hide anymore. Her curtain stayed open just enough for him to see her silhouette, arms crossed, phone in hand, documenting everything. When a couple from downtown arrived to pick up a commissioned wine cabinet, she stood in her yard under the guise of watering an already saturated flower bed, phone aimed steadily at them. That night, his client emailed him shaken. They'd been followed on their way out of the neighborhood. A dark SUV trailed them until they crossed into city limits. Ethan didn't even have to ask who it was. It wasn't just surveillance anymore. It was intimidation. Ethan sat at his kitchen table, his laptop open beside a legal pad cluttered with dates, times, names. He didn't know exactly what Karen's endgame was, but she was escalating, and she had leverage. He'd researched her. Now, she'd worked in the county clerk's office for nearly a decade. Her name showed up in dozens of internal memos related to property code enforcement support. She knew how to file complaints that stuck. Worse, she knew how to stay just inside the lines. But so did Ethan. Now, he began reaching out quietly. Ethan contacted the HOA board, requesting minutes from all meetings for the last 6 months. It took some wrangling, but the documents eventually came. What he found sent a chill crawling down his spine. Karen had proposed an amendment to the HOA bylaws just weeks after moving in, one that gave the compliance chair the power to investigate potential business activities with minimal board oversight. The amendment had passed in a private vote, with only 2 board members present besides Karen. Both of them had since stepped down. Ethan checked the timestamp on the meeting minutes. The vote had taken place the same week his first violation letter arrived. He pushed away from the table, eyes unfocused. She'd laid the trap before she ever spoke to him, and she wasn't done. A few days later, He received an official notice from the county's zoning department, not HOA, but actual municipal authorities requesting verification of business permits. The envelope was crisp, the language impersonal, but something in it smelled familiar. He cross-referenced the letterhead with a signature he'd seen in an online directory. Karen hadn't just reported him. She'd filed the complaint herself. It was too much. Ethan called Layla and told her everything, every threat, every drone, every creeping move Karen had made. She didn't hesitate. "You need to document everything," she said. "She's hiding behind bureaucracy. Expose her, and she won't have anywhere left to crawl." So he built a wall not with bricks, but with proof. He stored screenshots of every HOA bulletin, captured video of her lurking with her phone in hand, tracked the cars that passed slowly, always circling back. Each time something strange occurred, like the mailbox that had been crushed in the middle of the night, he logged it still. Karen pressed forward. One night, a man Ethan didn't recognize knocked on his door. He claimed to be from the neighborhood compliance team, but refused to show identification. Ethan didn't let him pass the porch. The next morning, another anonymous letter arrived, this one with a printed zoning violation form, left taped to his fence. It wasn't signed. Again, Karen's fingerprints were all over it, but Ethan wasn't intimidated anymore. He was building something, and this time, it wasn't furniture, it was a case, and Karen was giving him every nail he needed. Ethan always believed that silence was the mark of a good neighborhood. No shouting, no drama, just routine, peace, and the steady hum of life moving forward. But now, every quiet corner of Willow Creek felt like a lie. Silence wasn't peace, it was fear, and Karen had made sure of it. A week passed without another formal letter, but that didn't mean she had stopped. If anything, her tactics had just gone underground. The new HOA bulletin printed and left on every doorstep warned vaguely about unauthorized enterprise activities degrading the community standard. Ethan's house was the only one with a red checkmark next to the mailbox. He knew what she was doing. She was isolating him, turning the neighborhood into witnesses, and it was working. People stopped waving. A couple he'd once shared barbecue with walked their dog on the opposite sidewalk now. He even caught one neighbor snapping a photo of his open garage as if following an order. Ethan wasn't sleeping much. His cameras had picked up strange movements at night, someone walking up to his trash cans, someone stopping at the side gate, a figure ducking low and disappearing behind the hedges. He filed a police report, they said without a face. There was little they could do. "Looks like neighborhood drama," the officer had said. "Document everything, but don't expect miracles." That night, he almost didn't check his email. But when he did, a single message stood out in the flood of order updates and spam. Subject: "You're not the only one she's done this to." He opened it. The sender was a woman named Delia Mintz from Cross Hollow Estates, a community 30 miles south. She'd found his name in an online HOA dispute forum, where Ethan had cautiously posted part of his story, fishing for similar experiences. Delia's email was short, but chilling. Karen had lived on her street 2 years ago. She'd joined the HOA board within a month, then led a crusade against a local music teacher who taught lessons from his home. Delia's words were blunt. She didn't stop until he moved out. She said he invited strangers into the neighborhood, spread rumors, called child services. The guy had a breakdown. House sold for $40,000 under value. She left 3 months later, just moved on. "You're not her first." Ethan stared at the screen. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, heart pounding. He responded with a cautious thank you and asked if she had documentation. The reply came within minutes: attachments, photos of newsletters, copies of anonymous complaints with handwriting that looked eerily familiar. He saved every file, but something in Delia's final message stuck with him. "She's good at staying just this side of legal, but she always leaves fingerprints. You just have to know where to look." That night, Ethan pulled up the county's public access portal. It was a slog of refiling, every zoning notice, every committee note, line after line of dry bureaucracy. But Ethan wasn't skimming anymore. He was reading every word, every every file tied to Karen Deloney's digital signature. That's when he saw it: 3 property complaints, filed within 5 minutes of each other, different names, different addresses, but all submitted from the same IP address, logged through the clerk's internal system. The reports were anonymous, but she'd filed them from her work account. She wasn't just abusing her role in the HOA, she was abusing her government access. And that changed everything. He copied the IP logs, downloaded the forms, took screenshots. Then he did something that felt almost dangerous. He picked up his phone. "I need an attorney," he said, "one who deals with public employee misconduct," for the first time in weeks. His voice didn't shake. Ethan sat in the conference room of a modest law office just outside city limits. The attorney, Marla Denton, was pragmatic and efficient. She'd represented whistleblowers, targeted homeowners, even a few small business owners crushed under city bureaucracy. She asked very few questions, most of them legal in nature, but Ethan could tell she saw the bigger picture. She filed zoning complaints from her work terminal, Ethan said, sliding over the printed logs. "Look at the times. Used county resources to harass me." Marla flipped through the documents, nodding as she read. "You're not wrong," she muttered. "It's called abuse of position. She's crossing legal boundaries, thin ones, maybe, but enough to get attention, especially with her HOA ties." Ethan had come prepared: videos from the cameras, screenshots of her anonymous messages, copies of reading threats, even audio from one of his clients who'd received a call from a woman strongly suggesting they stop working with him. Her voice was distinctive, cold, controlled. "Karen, let me guess," Marla said. "She never puts her name on anything." Ethan almost laughed. "Never once. But she leaves her scent everywhere." She looked at him carefully. "This woman has spent years perfecting the art of untraceable control. What's different now is that she picked a fight with someone who's not backing down." Marla explained the plan. She'd start with a formal complaint to the county HR department. That alone might rattle Karen's world. If Internal Affairs started pulling logs or asking questions, Karen would feel the ground shift under her feet. Simultaneously, Marla would help Ethan file a cease and desist order through civil court enough to put his concerns into official record. Even if nothing stuck immediately, it would box Karen in. But Ethan didn't want quiet pressure. He wanted sunlight. He wanted her exposed, so Marla gave him the green light to collect statements from neighbors and anyone willing to share similar experiences, and to do it legally but loudly. That same afternoon, Ethan printed a stack of flyers. He walked door to door, polite, calm, and open. No accusations, just a request for shared experiences involving HOA targeting, anonymous threats, or suspicious committee decisions. At first, no one answered. But then, at house number 8, an elderly woman named Mrs. Greaves opened her door and, upon hearing Karen's name, simply said, "She threatened to find me for my rose bushes," said they were invasive. At house number 12, a young couple admitted Karen had sent HOA notices about suspicious activity. When they hosted a baby shower with guests parking on the street, she took pictures, said we were violating guest limits. We thought she was just ... weird, controlling, but not like this. Each story was a crack in Karen's pristine mask. But it was what happened next that sent shockwaves through the neighborhood. 3 days later, an anonymous neighbor slid an envelope under Ethan's front door. Inside were printed screenshots of a private HOA group chat Karen had apparently run through a third-party app. It included conversations between Karen and 2 other board members, where she openly boasted about destroying the little Etsy man's empire and removing the workshop infestation. One line was underlined in blue ink. "He'll crack soon. They always do when you cut off their money." Ethan stared at the page, pulse quickening. She wasn't just vindictive. She was systematic, calculated, predatory. The next morning, Marla submitted the official misconduct complaint to the county's HR department. And that same afternoon, Karen received a call from her supervisor. Ethan didn't need to hear the conversation. He watched her from his window, shoulders tense, pacing her driveway, phone clamped to her ear. Then, for the first time, she looked across the street at him, not with smugness, but panic. Karen had stopped watering her flowers. The perfect lines in her garden now sagged under overgrowth. Her SUV sat idle in the driveway, dust creeping along the windshield edges. For the first time since she moved into Willow Creek, her presence seemed ... diminished. But Ethan knew better. People like Karen didn't retreat, they recalibrated. The county hadn't responded publicly to the misconduct report yet, but the whispers had started. One of Marla's contacts in the records office called with a quiet update. Internal Affairs had pulled Karen's login records. The digital footprints she'd tried to bury were already under review. Ethan wanted to feel relief, but instead, he felt the electric buzz of something nearing detonation. On Thursday evening, the HOA sent out a notice. Emergency Compliance Committee. Meeting all residents invited. The location was changed from the clubhouse to the larger community center. No agenda was attached. No speaker list. Just a time. 7 p.m., the rumor mill exploded. Ethan didn't plan to speak. He didn't have to. Marla advised him to attend, observe, and let the pressure Karen created collapse under its own weight. "She's overextended," she said. "She's losing control, and when someone like her panics, they expose their worst self." Still, Ethan came prepared. He brought a folder of printed statements from affected neighbors, copies of the group chat screenshots, the anonymous notes, and 2 high-resolution stills from his security footage. Karen's SUV parked across his driveway at 2:03 a.m. when Ethan arrived. The room was already buzzing. Over 50 residents filled folding chairs. Some stood along the back wall. The HOA board sat stiffly at a long table in front. 3 members, Karen in the center. Her expression was drawn tight, jaw clenched, but her voice was smooth when she spoke. "Thank you for coming. This meeting is in response to recent baseless allegations and misunderstandings involving enforcement activities." She never used his name, never acknowledged the misconduct report, but everyone knew. Karen started flipping through a series of projected slides, bland charts about HOA compliance rates and minor neighborhood infractions. It was her usual tactic, drown the room in procedure until they forgot what they came for. But this time, it didn't work. Halfway through her monotone lecture on hedge height violations, a man in the audience stood up. Greg Marston, longtime resident and former board member Karen, had quietly pushed out months ago. "I'd like to know," he said loudly, "why the HOA chair has been using her position to target a neighbor's legal livelihood, or why she's filed multiple anonymous complaints from a county account during business hours." Murmurs swept through the room. Karen froze, blinking rapidly. "This is not the forum, it is now," said another voice. Mrs. Greaves, standing from the second row. "You tried to find me for flowers." "Flowers." Karen's face flushed. "If anyone feels wronged, there are procedures. I have screenshots," Ethan said clearly, rising slowly from the back. "Proof that you ran a smear campaign, filed fake complaints, and tried to sabotage my business." Karen's head snapped toward him. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "I do," he said. "And so does your employer." The silence was thunderous. Karen stood abruptly, papers fluttering from her clipboard. "This meeting is adjourned immediately." She strode toward the exit, ignoring the sea of stares. But halfway out the door, someone stepped in front of her. Lisa Urell, a county HR investigator. She held out a folded paper. "Karen Delaney." She asked. Karen paused, expression cracking. "You've been placed on administrative leave pending investigation." Karen didn't speak. She didn't need to, because in that moment, everyone knew. She was done. Karen didn't return home that night. Her porch light stayed off, her curtains drawn tight. By morning, her SUV was gone, and by noon, a county worker had arrived to change the lock on her office door at the courthouse. It didn't take long for the rest of the neighborhood to piece things together. Word spread fast and sharp. A few residents still held on to their doubts, but Ethan didn't care. He hadn't set out to make Karen a pariah. He'd set out to stop her. Marla called that afternoon with confirmation. "She's officially suspended from county service pending a full investigation. They've pulled everything: her login, logs, complaint filings, even audio recordings from internal calls." Ethan could hear rustling papers on her end. "They're not playing around. You don't harass residents using county access and walk away with a slap on the wrist anymore. Especially not with the timing and volume of what she filed." "What?" "About the cease and desist," Ethan asked. "Already filed and served. And you'll want to know this: 3 neighbors just asked me if they can join a group suit. Harassment, libel, HOA, abuse. They've been waiting for someone to lead the charge." Ethan was silent for a moment. He'd started this just trying to protect his livelihood. Now he had a line of people behind him holding up their own stories like his. Victims of intimidation, whispers, quiet compliance, driven by fear. Karen had ruled through isolation, and now that isolation was her own. Later that week, Ethan stood in his driveway sanding down a newly assembled bookshelf when Mrs. Greaves walked over with 2 lemon bars wrapped in foil. "I'm sorry for not speaking up earlier," she said. "You were the first to fight back. The rest of us just hid." Ethan gave a tired smile. "I can't blame anyone. She was good at making people afraid." "She still is," the old woman replied. "But now, she's afraid too." At night, the doorbell rang. Ethan checked the porch camera before opening the door. A man in a suit stood on the welcome mat, holding a folder under one arm and a business card in the other. "Mr. Caldwell," the man asked. "My name's Trent Yarrow. One represent a local news station. We're doing a story on HOA overreach and harassment. Word is, you've got a story worth telling." Ethan wasn't sure what to say. The man smiled. A neighbor shared a few details discreetly. "But we'd love to talk. People need to know how far some HOAs and public officials are willing to go when there's no one watching." Ethan didn't agree immediately. But something about the way the man said it, that last phrase, sat with him long after the door closed. When no one is watching, that was Karen's world. A world where she manipulated from shadows, where silence protected her more than any rule. But now, the lights were on. The next day, Ethan gave the interview. It aired the following week on a Wednesday evening. His story, blurred client quotes, audio recordings, even redacted HOA meeting notes showing Karen's name stamped all over. Suspicious activity? The segment ended with a voiceover noting the ongoing investigation into her actions as both a county employee and HOA leader. And then came the final blow. Karen was fired. The termination was swift, quiet, but public record. Misuse of government systems, harassment, violation of ethics. Her profile was pulled from the county site. Her office cleaned out. 3 days later, a moving truck appeared in her driveway. She didn't wave goodbye. She didn't say a word. She just left. And as the truck pulled away, Ethan stood at his window, not gloating, not angry, just relieved. It was over, or so he thought. The moving truck had been gone for 5 days. Karen's house stood hollow and quiet, the shutters closed like eyelids that would never open again. A realtor's sign hung in the yard, tilting in the wind. Willow Creek felt lighter, smiled again. Small talk returned to the sidewalks, and for the first time in months, Ethan left his garage door open without feeling watched. But unease clung to him like a film he couldn't scrub off. Not because she was gone, because she'd gone quietly. Karen wasn't the type to leave without scratching her initials into the doorframe. Marla felt it too. Most people, After a firing like that, start damage control. They lawyer up. Issue statements, Karen. She disappeared. No countersuit, no appeals, no sound. Ethan didn't respond. He just stared at the email he'd received that morning. One line. No sender name, no reply address. We're not finished. It had arrived. At 3:14 a.m. At first, he thought it was spam. But something about the wording, the time, the deliberate placement of the period, it felt surgical, cold, familiar. He showed Marla. She nodded slowly. Keep everything backed up. Lock your data down. She may not have a badge anymore, but she knows how to find things. 2 days later, strange things started happening. An order form for a custom cabinet vanished from Ethan's inbox before he could download it. The client swore they sent it twice. Then his business website went down for 5 hours, displaying only a white screen with one sentence. In violation of local use code, reported he'd paid his hosting platform. His permits were current. There was no reason for it, but the damage was done. 2 commissions canceled that afternoon. Another client, a law firm, politely backed out, citing increased concern about recent press. She's poisoning the well again, Layla said when he called her in a panic. From the outside this time, Marla confirmed it. It's cyberstalking now. Digital defamation, intimidation, possibly identity fraud. If she's masking her name and sending anonymous messages pretending to be local officials, that's serious. Ethan wasn't sleeping again. He took to locking his garage every time he stepped away, even for lunch. He moved his security cameras higher, installed password managers, and changed every login twice. But it was the mail that broke the illusion of safety. One envelope, no return address, no stamp. Just a folded court summons inside. Karen had filed a counterclaim. Civil harassment? Defamation? False damage to reputation? Ethan laughed when he saw it, but the laugh caught in his throat. The court date was set. She wasn't done at all. She's doing this to bleed you, Marla said, tapping the papers. She knows the case won't hold up, but it drags you into court. Costs time, money, stress. It's a tactic. Desperate, but still dangerous. Ethan pressed his palms against his eyes. He'd thought the storm was over, but Karen wasn't trying to win anymore. She was trying to burn everything down on her way out. Marla leaned forward, her voice low. You have to make a decision now. We can respond quietly, or we counter-sue go public with everything. Press charges for cyber-stalking, slander, civil fraud. We bring her scorched earth back to her. Ethan looked out the window, past the fence, past the street, to the vacant house with its darkened porch. No more quiet, he said. She wanted a war. Let's give her one. Ethan had never imagined the fight would come to this. Courtrooms, lawyers, public hearings. But when Karen's counterclaim arrived, it was clear the battle wasn't just about a workshop or a parking violation anymore. It was about survival. With Marla's guidance, Ethan took the offensive. The countersuit was fierce, of cyberstalking, defamation, abuse of office, and harassment piled high. She hadn't just pushed him around with HOA memos. She'd invaded his clients' lives, used county resources for personal vendettas, and manipulated neighbors into silence. The evidence was airtight. The courtroom was tense. Karen appeared for the first time since the firing, no longer the cold, calculating HOA chairwoman, but a woman forced into the harsh glare of exposure. She tried to deflect, claim mistaken identity, even hinted at mental health struggles. But the judge was unmoved. You have weaponized your position to harm a neighbor and small business owner, the judge said, voice stern. This court finds your actions unacceptable. Then came the surprise. Karen's defense attorney, desperate for any leverage, produced a letter on unsigned confession. It claimed Karen had been coerced by an unknown third party to target Ethan, suggesting the entire campaign was orchestrated by someone else trying to sabotage his business. The courtroom buzzed with whispers. Was there more beneath the surface? Marla was ready. Your Honor, she said, standing firm. There is no credible evidence supporting these claims. All documents, logs, and witness testimonies confirm Karen's sole responsibility. Under cross-examination, Karen's story unraveled further. Emails between her and an anonymous online persona revealed her pride in orchestrating the harassment, boasting about taking down the workshop infestation. There was no puppet master, just Karen's obsession. The final blow came when a respected neighborhood elder, Mrs. Greaves, took the stand. With quiet dignity, she described the years of fear Karen inflicted on the community and the relief that followed her departure. Her testimony struck a chord, reminding everyone that this wasn't just a legal battle, but a fight for the soul of Willow Creek. The judge ruled decisively. Karen was ordered to pay restitution to Ethan and several neighbors for damages and legal fees. A restraining order was placed against her, forbidding contact with Ethan or any Willow Creek resident. Most importantly, the HOA board was instructed to overhaul its governance, adding safeguards against abuses of power. Karen left the courthouse that day with her reputation shattered, facing the consequences she'd long evaded. She was forced to sell her home in Willow Creek at a significant loss, moving away to start anew alone and without influence. Ethan returned to his workshop, the familiar scent of sawdust and pine filling the air. Business boomed once more, his clients rallying. In support, the neighborhood felt like home again, not a prison of whispered threats and hidden cameras. But the story didn't end quietly. Months later, as Ethan was preparing a custom dining set for a local charity, a letter arrived. No return address. Inside, a simple note. Thank you for exposing the truth. Some battles aren't fought with nails and wood, but with courage and community. Willow Creek is stronger because of you. Ethan smiled, folded the note, and pinned it above his workbench. Justice hadn't just been served, it had been crafted with care, patience, and relentless heart.